Picture this, March 21st, 2000. A 19-year-old named Zahid Mubarek is supposed to be going home. He's just finished a short sentence at a young offender institution, but instead, just hours before he was set to be released, he was brutally murdered in his own cell. What followed was this massive public inquiry, sifting through over 15,000 pages of evidence. And the goal wasn't just to find out who killed him, but to figure out how an entire system could let something like this happen. To really wrap your head around the scale of this tragedy, we have to start with a pretty shocking admission from the very top of the system that was supposed to protect him. A statement like this, it's incredibly rare. This wasn't some carefully crafted press release. This was a direct, brutally honest admission of failure from the head of the prison service, sent right to Zahid's grieving family. That tells you that from day one, the authorities knew this wasn't just some random act of violence. It was a failure of their most basic duty of care. And that phrase right there, a preventable death, that's what hangs over this entire story. It immediately brings up the biggest question of all. If this could have been prevented, why wasn't it? That's what we're going to unpack. So, who were the two young men at the center of this so-called preventable death? The answer? Well, it's key to understanding just how negligent this whole situation really was. On one side, you have Zahid Mubarek. Just a teenager, a first-time offender, serving a short sentence, probably just counting the hours until he could go home. And then, on the other side, you have Robert Stewart. The inquiry dug up a really chilling history on him. Violent, disruptive, openly racist. I mean, a prison officer had literally described him in his file as a disaster waiting to happen. The system didn't just randomly throw them together. It actively placed a known violent racist in a shared cell with a young Asian man for 6 weeks. And then, the predictable, preventable disaster happened. On the very morning he was supposed to walk free, Zahid was attacked in his sleep. The tragic irony of the timing it's just almost unbearable. So, this is the question, right? How could the system make such a catastrophic error? It wasn't just one bad call. The inquiry found it was a complete and total systemic breakdown. What the investigation uncovered wasn't just a single crack in the system. It was more like a total collapse, a cascade of failures, really, at every single level you can imagine. Just look at this timeline of missed warnings. It's staggering. 2 years before the murder, Stewart was linked to another killing inside a prison. He was officially on record as a disaster waiting to happen. He was writing letters filled with racist garbage, which were intercepted, but then just dismissed as him showing off. Any one of these things should have been a giant flashing red light. But after all that, he gets transferred to Feltham, and unbelievably, they don't even do a risk assessment before putting him in a cell with someone else. And this right here shows the bureaucratic nightmare perfectly. The information existed. It was all there, written down in file after file. But here's the breakdown. Nobody read the files. Critical security info wasn't shared when he was transferred. The computer systems didn't talk to each other. So the officers on the ground, the people actually making the cell-sharing decisions, they were completely flying blind. They had no idea who they were dealing with. So was it just incompetence? Well, the inquiry went a step further. It delivered a pretty damning verdict, calling the prison service institutionally racist. Now, that doesn't just mean a few individual officers were prejudiced, though the inquiry found that too. It means the system itself, through its day-to-day routines and its overall culture, created an environment of indifference and insensitivity to the very real risks that minority prisoners were facing. And the most chilling consequence of that culture? At one point, Zahid himself actually asked to be moved out of the cell. The request was ignored. It wasn't written down. Nobody acted on it. There wasn't even a proper system to log a request like that. In a culture that actually took his safety seriously, that simple request could have saved his life. But the inquiry wasn't just about pointing fingers. Its real goal was to create a roadmap for change, to try and make sure something like this could never, ever happen again. And the recommendations they came up with hit every single one of those failures we just talked about. Mandatory risk assessments, so you don't put dangerous people together. A national database, so information can't just get lost between prisons. Better training to fight that culture of indifference. And, as a long-term goal, to just stop forcing prisoners to share cells at all. Each recommendation is basically a lesson written in blood. But the report also zoomed out, and it made this really crucial connection. This wasn't just about racism or bad paperwork.
It was about the fundamental health of the prison itself. The inquiry basically concluded that a tragedy like this was way more likely to happen in a place that was already failing.
And Feltham was failing, badly. Before the murder, inspectors had called it a gigantic transit camp. It was dangerously overcrowded, chronically understaffed, and completely starved of funds. In that kind of environment, basic stuff, like officers actually getting to know the prisoners or doing proper cell searches, that all goes out the window. It basically created the perfect storm, a chaotic and unsafe place where all the little failures that led to Zahid's murder could just fester. And this brings us to the most unsettling question of all. The inquiry gave this huge warning that overcrowding, understaffing, and underfunding create the perfect conditions for disaster. Now, decades later, with our prisons still facing those exact same pressures, we have to ask, have the lessons from Zahid Mubarak's truly preventable death actually been learned?